Mr. I'll welcome to the stage Mr. Nawiko Masie, who will be facilitating this Bringing It Together session. Please help me welcome him to the stage.
Good afternoon and welcome to this last segment of our meeting today. As we start, I think before we had broken into groups, into some parallel sessions, and this is the time now when we'll be receiving the key messages, the emerging insights, and the strategic opportunities from the discussions which we had. So at this time, I would like to invite representatives from the three groups to come up front. The first is the East Africa Commission and the SADC group. They should come in front, the representative from that group, and also the one which was dealing with the science policy interface to come up front. And the last but not the least was the issue on the climate information services. The SADC group. Do we have a representative from the SADC, East African Commission? Rachel? Thank you. So I'll give each one of you about 5 minutes just to give us the key messages which came out from the discussions, the emerging insights, and also the strategic objectives from your group discussions.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I am John Recha, a research scientist from the CGIAR, and specifically the International Livestock Research Institute, based in Nairobi, Kenya, and I'm part of the climate change research team. I was part of the CADESA team on leveraging climate information services to drive climate smart agriculture in the SADC region. And the main objective of this was catalyze learning and partnerships around the role of climate information services for accelerating the uptake and scaling of climate smart agriculture in the region. And so we were showcasing high impact use cases and what can be done to foster regional collaboration. The key messages are a number, and one was, given the extreme climate conditions, and specifically the extreme events of floods and droughts and pest infestation, the SADC region must act promptly to ensure livelihoods, food security, and even regional stability. So the recommendations here are bridging science and action. That involves translate climate data that is gotten by the Met departments into actionable insights that inform policy planning and even the ag practices. And then secondly, cross-border climate information platform is important. Now that we've got the SADC Climate Services Center, this is something that can be taken to scale, at momentum. And that now involves in having these platforms to share climate information across the borders and even have a component of issuing early warning messages and outline the necessary actions. Then the other one is having an integration of climate information systems. They are there in the different countries, but there is a way they can be put together so that they are in a way speaking to each other. And that way we can have efforts which are easily taken to scale. And then there is a need for having a framework within the SADC region that combines CIS for CSA. That means developing a competitive framework that can promote climate human services altogether that is tailored towards climate smart agriculture. So that there is no kind of two different processes that sometimes seem not to be speaking to each other. And then mobilizing climate finance is important. That means seeking funding where possible, bringing the private sector, and then ensuring that they have an aspect of funding that can collect climate data, generate the climate information that's downscaled and appropriate, and then that one ends up feeding into climate smart agriculture. Another aspect that was talked about here is strengthening the public-private partnerships, where they are there for infrastructure and putting up roads. Typically, they don't end up becoming prominent in enhancing partnerships for bringing about climate smart agriculture to be undertaken. And then, as we were discussing, it also emerged that there is a need to collaborate across the borders. Yes, we've got SADC, we also have COMESA, but if there is a way to have the activities, because climate change cuts across the border, it does not discriminate. Hence, there's a need to be able to pursue integration of policies that foster collaboration across the borders and cooperation. And this has been done, for example, in the IGAD region, it can be done here. And then lastly, regional policies where possible that have got the CIS, that's Climate Information Services, and as well as CSA, and then translating the prediction models in the CIS into grassroots information for climate smart agriculture and having people in the different categories involved. And then lastly, of course, documentation of success stories where it has worked well so that people see the need for tailoring climate services products altogether towards climate smart agriculture. By following these strategies, we think that the SADC region can be better able to be prepared to respond to climate change and end up improving productivity per unit area. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Kwazi Zuma from the Agricultural Research Council. I come Hertzfield, Pretoria. So for this work, I represent CFS, which is the consortium under the International Research Consortium that is supporting the FNSSA. So for this session, we looked more in terms of the collaborative opportunities to align national, regional, and EU policies and investment in food system transformation. One of our objectives that we wanted to understand the policy implementation ambitions in Southern Africa. We also wanted to know how do we communicate where EU funding can best support national and local goals. We also wanted to learn what learning mechanisms are needed at national, regional, and EU level to coordinate policy and investment at food system transformation tipping point. We started this session through sharing the status quo between the AU and EU policy, and also we raised how FNSSA was formed, the FNSSA projects that are looking at the R&I that are invested in terms of ensuring that there are food systems transformation around Africa. We also look at the investment that has been made between the EU. About 500 projects currently exist. Some of them were presented, like the Foster Health and also other initiatives that the EU has funded. We also looked at the amount and the money that has been invested into these projects. So I come from the MEL systems at FNSSA that looks at what has been done, what has worked, what has been the impact so far through the FNSSA roadmap. Through these discussions, we also highlighted some of the challenges that we have identified as the team or as IRC or CFS that there are no synergies and also there are no alignment between the AU, EU, regional, also national, and also policy. We know there are so many projects that are funded by these institutions. However, we wanted to ensure how can we harmonize them to ensure that even the farmers or the end users of these projects are involved in also in co-creation and also in collaborative efforts. So we look at which strategies can we take forward and also what message can we take to the AU, EU funding systems and also the HLPD and also the policymakers. So some of the discussions, I've got them in bullet points. I think it's about 3 pages, but I will try to capture. This was a good collaborative engagement. It had also youth members, so it was inclusive and also it was gender dominated. So there were the suggestions were saying that we need to have collaborative opportunities. The collaborative opportunities says we collaborate, we do co-creation, we involve all relevant stakeholders from farmer perspective, the training of trainers, the extension workers, we involved industry because there was a concern that at current, we have issues where industry is not involved. However, sometimes industry is really important because we will look at the blended finance system where they can assist us. Also, we spoke about the need for alignment where you look in countries where you have provinces, national, regional, and also AU, EU, bicontinental engagement, because we found that in most of these research-funded projects, we look to scale up, where we look at SDGs, where we look at the FAO, where we look at the CAADP XP indicators. However, what about our national? What about our policies? Who are the beneficiaries of these? And we also noticed that some of these projects, when you go to province level, they are not making impact. However, because of the nature that they are designed and also they are controlled by the grant or the funders. So there was also a call for accountability where we could design meal or MEL approaches, which is monitoring, evaluation, accountability, and learning systems, because we want to learn from the AU and also from the EU. We know that at the current present, the EU is dominating, hence some of these calls are channeled and also the Africa side becomes receivers. However, there was also a point raised to say we need to create blended finance system. The reason for this is that if you go to Europe now, I was in Wageningen a few weeks ago, and they were speaking of now, they want to fund things as that benefits Europe. So you will have systems that we go as Africans, as researchers, or as institutions, and then we are not saving the purpose. We know the issue of America, it also popped up. So it was, the colleagues said then we need to have blended finance where Africa becomes dominant, not only the beneficiaries, where if we speak of agri-food systems, we do our systems the way we understand them, and also we integrate indigenous or local knowledges into that rather than having the only one-sided channel. We also thought of having quantitative approaches. These approaches start from the call perspective. If the funders are saying we've got a grant of Horizon 5, Horizon 6, and then we have quantitative engagement, where now we want to synergize, we want to work with councils, we want to work with NAROs, we want to work with farmers, where we say, is this really good for South Africa? We want to work with policy workers, policy makers, we want to work at food and nutrition sensitive institutions and custodians. We also spoke of fixing or trying to align our administrative issues. Currently, if you look at the MNE or the impact of the FNSSA project, you would find that in Africa we have issues of administration, and most of us are researchers. We are applying to these positions against the European counterparts, and we find that things are working for them. However, for us, they are not working because of the administrative issues. The SCM issue, you had said you want to buy something worth of 10 million, and then you find that it takes 6 months. Also the legal perspective of those issues, because in some of our institutions, these projects take about 6 to 8 months to start, while in Europe, systems are fast and systems are quick. So the colleagues also thought maybe we need to align and also fix our administrative situations. And also we considered that maybe there is a need to create proper funders working group where inclusivity, not only few funders that meet and come with calls, but if you have a funders working group within the FNSSA or the AU, they come and say, what are the needs of Africa? What are the needs of Europe? What can we learn from Europe, and what can we implement going forward, so that these roadmaps do not become a deciding point for Africa. And then the last point we spoke about is the role players. We need to put systems where we include the beneficiaries, the vulnerable, should it be vulnerable, to the funder, to the policymakers, and the science, and also the R&I. Thank you very much, colleagues.
Good afternoon. Yeah, let's wrap up. Our prior session looked at harmonization and implementation of policy frameworks related to agriculture within the East African community and Southern African Development Community. I have to emphasize again that this was a technical review, not a final validation. So participants also emphasized the need for continued consultation, given the presentation that we shared, not only with the regional representative, but also national focal points. And the feedback that will be gathered will inform the next report that we are going to submit. Having said that, from the policy frameworks that we looked at continental level, CADIP, AFCDA, AYS, and the fertilizer policy, most of the countries have ratified the key frameworks, but there is limited domestication and implementation, and in most cases it is even, and this is due to limited financing and fragmented institutional coordination, as well as weak monitoring and accountability systems. So in some countries, while there is implementation, but there is no data to show, to prove that they are doing something. So that's where weak monitoring and accountability systems is coming in. Now, because the basis of the review is to look at youth inclusion in continental and regional frameworks, we found that we discussed that both the African agribusiness youth strategy are well aligned with the regional youth strategies and also national youth strategies. However, implementation is often symbolic, like youth are kind of like a point of tokenism, because there is never a dedicated funding for most of the countries. There is also weak youth engagement in governance and also absence of dedicated data to track youth impact. So key areas identified for improvement includes strengthening monitoring and evaluation systems, providing technical support for newer members, for instance, in East and Southern in East African community. DRC and Somalia didn't show enough progress because of political instability. They are also new into the community, as well as the financial issues. There is also need to invest in institutional capacity to improve interministerial collaboration and coordination. One of the key issues is that there is no coordination between related departments within member states. So also use of digital innovations is, for instance, e-certifications, dashboards, traceability tools for efficient implementation and monitoring. In terms of opportunities for youth, the stakeholders highlighted specific roles that they highlighted that member states need to take into accountability of the different demographics that the youth are in specific countries. For example, you have youth that are working, you have youth that have just finished college, youth that never went to college, and when we are designing implementation of programs or framework, they need to take into that, as youth are not a homogeneous group. Finally, there was also a suggestion for most of the implementation is lagging because of the lack of political will. So these are some of the systemic barriers that kind of like persist. You may find that there are robust frameworks at both continental and regional level, but implementation of these is not happening because the political will is not there. I think that's all that we had. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Those are the key messages which were coming from the parallel sessions which we had. Do we have any questions or comments on what has been submitted? Any comments or questions? I see none. Oh, I've got one there. You can go ahead.
Yeah, thanks so much for the presentations. What I've noted is that most of the recommendations will need to be broken down. I'll just give one example about the integrated policy approach or regional integrated policies. What goes into that? What's the process? What's been the environment in terms of facilitating such kind of an approach in that context? The reason why I'm suggesting something like this is it's very common of us as technicians to make blank propositions like those ones without going down to the context and unpacking what really goes into coming up with such kind of an initiative in that respect. And that is why you'd see that progress across regional integrated policies is quite varied, of course, because of contextual factors, but the other factor could be that the assessment of the capacities of the institutions to act on those kind of propositions may not have been fully understood. So there is need for us also to have a surface understanding of what it takes to have an integrated policy approach, how that will actually act in terms of its operationalization, and what other key elements are needed for us to facilitate the operationalization and impactful transformation aspects about those kind of approaches. So I'm actually suggesting that at some point in time, these recommendations will have to be broken down, because when you're sitting with a policymaker and you tell them that, you know what, you need to adopt an integrated approach to this kind of a thing, the question will be, how do I go about that? So the capacities are really very important for us to really gain some traction along those lines. Thank you.
Thank you. At the far back there.
Thank you, Chair. I just want to lend my voice to systems or integrated approaches that are working elsewhere. And if they do work elsewhere, why not in SADC region? I'll give an example, and that's practical. IGAD region do have the Climate and Application Center, ICPAC. It is doing excellently well. These are initiatives that were started across the continent for these different regions. I do expect SADC to similarly have its center operational that goes beyond borders. I'm saying this on a critical element. We are in dire strait, and action in SADC region should be now because of the danger we are facing with climate extremes. Right now, you see 2-3 tropical cyclones, perennial tropical cyclones across the SADC region. that will increase, no doubt. And intensity and the decimation of the region from these tropical cyclones will be monumental. Do you continue to wait to look for frameworks to begin to unravel or solve these problems? I'm aware in this region there is a framework on meteorology. Can we update that to include those cross-border collaborative efforts to ensure that we move forward? These are things we don't need to wait. Policymakers are aware that when you spend $1, the return on investment is $7 or more for those things we are talking about, even in agriculture, in food security. I think we need to act now. It should be even yesterday, not even today. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other question or comment? I see none. Maybe you can respond to, if you have got any responses to those two issues.
Actually, Mr. Moderator, the response that was given
By-
addressed
yes.
the question that was raised.
Sure.
And that's an example of how climate information services is working within one region, the IGAD region, that can also work in a similar way. So we can learn from one another, peer-to-peer learning, and come up with tailoring it for the SADC region, and then have the best practices taken to scale.
Sure.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments or questions? Prof. Can you go ahead?
Mine, I have a controversial comment. So, can I take this opportunity to try and share my understanding of scaling? Because I think since morning, scaling has been coming into the discussions. So, scaling strategies are divided into three, basically, and we often mix them up. The common one is scaling out, reaching bigger numbers with the technology and innovation. Then there's the hidden one, which is very important, that we call scaling deep, when you try to influence the cultures, traditions, and so on, especially in a continent like ours with strong traditions. You deal with them through innovation and technology. That's scaling deep. Then there's the one which CADESA and FANAPAN and most of the organizations in this room have to also do, which is scaling up. Scaling up is influencing institutions, policies, and legislation. So when most of us say scaling up, they think they are talking about scaling up, yet they're talking about scaling out. So we're writing a paper on scaling strategies in Africa, and we'll share the manuscript when it is approved. But it's important to understand that we have to do scaling up holistically. Scaling up, scaling out, and scaling deep. Thank you.
Thank you very much for those definitions, Prof. Any other comments or contributions? If none, you may join me to thank my panelists here by giving them a big hand. Maybe the camera people, you. Thank you.
can now clap hands for me for taking you through today's program. Thank you. As we wrap up today's program, I would just like to sincerely thank all the speakers, all the facilitators, and of course, all of the participants who brought depth and energy and insights to today's discussions. I hope we carry the same energy into tomorrow's sessions, and tomorrow we'll be closing up. Just to catch you up on what we did throughout the whole day in just a minute, we began with plenary number 6, which was focusing on financing the future. Here we unpacked how to align investments with goals of agri-food systems transformation. This reminded us that financing isn't just about capital, but about long-term impact and inclusivity. In plenary number 7, we explored the water, energy, food ecosystems nexus and how integrated approaches can unlock transformative solutions for Africa's food systems. This was quite a complex conversation, but it was also crucial. And finally, in plenary 8, we were challenged to look inward and also forward as we reflected on how we track and measure the impact of agri-food systems investments. Without evidence, we risk good intentions not translating into meaningful outcomes. I really do hope that these discussions have inspired you, not just to think, but also to act. And also, I think it's important that I mention that it was my first time chairing a policy dialogue session, and it has been, thank you. It has been an absolute privilege to be able to walk this journey with you. I know that I ambushed you through lunch and tea break, just forcing you to finish your food quickly, but it was so we could finish on time, and look at us, we are just on time. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for your engagement, your questions, and your commitment to Africa's future. In English, we say goodbye. We'll see each other tomorrow, but because I'm Gen Z, I'm gonna say peace out, see ya.